Welcome to Guns, Gear, and Guns with Gary Gunderson. I am Gary Gunderson. I went to the Missouri Valley Arms Collectors Association 2022 gun show. I went to this show once before a few years ago, and it was really good, so I wanted to go back. Now, is it worth going out of your way for this gun show? I will say this show is unique compared to normal gun shows or even some of the big ones I have been to this year, like the Military Show of Shows and Tulsa Arms Show, because at this show there are a lot of informational displays that are competing against each other. There are some really good collections on display with a lot of interesting information. You can also vote on these to determine a winner. In some ways, just going to this show at the $12 admission is worth it, even if you don't have any money to spend, just to go through it as a pop-up museum of sorts. For example, there was a really cool Garand gas trap display with one specific thing that caught my attention, a case displaying all the manufacturers of Garand in-block clips for the World War II era. There were OSS pistols, there were Smith & Wesson top breaks, there were 32 displays, just all kinds of interesting things and collections for you to see and learn about. There were also some very good vendor tables where things are for sale, but they also had really cool displays and interesting items where someone has a specific collecting niche. The display focusing on serial number 1, firearms, comes to mind as something really specific but really cool. There was also a very nice display of Lugers showcasing the stampings on the top of the toggle, which was impressive. And even in the center of the show, they had a Maxim, Gatling, and Nordenfelt machine guns on display as the Victorian-era machine guns. As to the regular vendors, there is a lot to choose from. If it's Winchesters you want, they certainly have plenty. If I had to guess, I think Winchesters were probably the most prevalent item amongst collectible firearms at this show. I could be wrong, it's not like I counted it or anything, but there were multiple vendors with multiple tables with Winchesters just lined up all the way down. There were lots of original black powder revolvers to choose from. You want milsurps, they have them as well. There's a good selection of all types. There's also militaria, lots of helmets, uniforms, badges, etc. There's books. There are some tables with modern guns like any other gun show. There are tables that are just selling ammo. There are tables that have modern optics. There is an overall good selection, but the primary focus of the show is more collectible firearms instead of anything modern. If you only really like ARs, Glocks, or other modern polymers, there are probably better shows for you elsewhere, though you may still find things you like here. And I have to say, there are some good prices at this show. It's hit or miss, of course, but I think it's better than some of the other shows I've been to locally recently. There were, of course, things completely out of my price range that I could never afford or would even consider paying that amount for. Even some things I think were overpriced, but there were also definitely deals to be had. The one negative thing I will say about this year's show is that there were a lot more open tables this time compared to when I went a few years ago. I still think it was well worth the price of admission and that there was plenty to see. The show website boasts 758-foot long tables, and most of them were in use, but there were also a lot more empty tables than I would have thought, and more than I remembered from the last time I went. A minor thing in the long run, but worth mentioning. Even with these empty tables, if you told me next year there would be the same number of them, I would still not hesitate to go again. I believe this was also the first show since COVID, so that may have had something to do with it. Vendors may have ended up committing to other shows or events if they weren't certain this show was going to be held this year. It was a great show. Everyone I talked to was friendly, and there were a lot of knowledgeable vendors and patrons walking around ready to discuss firearms. It was open Saturday and Sunday, but if you were a member of the Missouri Valley Collectors Association, you could have gone on Friday, which may be something worth considering as well. though that would be an extra $35 a year. And other than a quarterly newsletter, I don't see any other real benefits on their website. But if you are a member and know of other perks, please comment them down below. I would really like to know. I had a lot of fun at this show, no doubt about it. It certainly is not as big as the Tulsa Arms show or the military show of shows, but it's still really good for the size and what it is. And for me, it's a much easier trip to make than either of those other shows. I will definitely plan to go back next year. And that's all I have for today. Let me know if you went to this show and what your experiences were. If you did you find some good deals? Did you think it was overpriced? If you have been going for years, was the amount of open tables unusual, or was it something that I'm just misremembering? Please let me know. Please subscribe to the channel to stay up to date on the newest videos. Like and share them as well. Thanks for watching.